I have a friend of mine who's not an alcoholic, and I exercise with him 3 days a week. We've done it for years, so I get pretty close to him. And a mutual friend of ours came to him the other day and said, "Are you one of Jack Keegan's disciples?" So he came to me and he said, "You know, hanging around with you, you get a bad reputation. You hang around with you and everybody thinks I'm an ex-drunk." So, which reminds me of the story about the guy who didn't want anybody to know that he was a member of AA, and he was told that he ought to go home at night, park the car on the lawn, go in the house, throw a chair through the window, stumble down the stairs, urinate in the bushes, and nobody will believe he's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I got to be careful, you know. Got to stop hanging out with these non-alcoholics. They're too sensitive. Step 8 made a list of all persons we had harmed, became willing to make amends to them all. Why would you do something like that? You know, when you think about it, why? What? You know, let bygones be bygones. I'm not drinking now. Why is it necessary for me to make this dumb list about people I'd harmed? And, of course, harmed meant if I were caught. See, if I weren't caught, then there was no harm. You all understand that. And, but they told me when I came in here to make that list. And they also told me that it was really, I don't know about people in here, but I had a tough time with relationships when I was drinking. I didn't get along with people too well. In any relationships, I think the alcoholics got to be on top. We got to be in control. You know, we got to run the show. We have to be able to tell the person what to do. That's the way it was. And I think even after we come in, we're the same way. I think for years after I came into AA, people would say, you know, well, let me buy you a cup of coffee. No, I'll buy it. You know, nobody could do anything for us. We had to be in control. We had to do it ourselves. And finally, one time I was reading an article in the Grapevine, and it said, let the guy buy the coffee. It was simple, you know. You want to buy me a cup of coffee? Good. I let Jimmy do it all the time now. Let him buy the coffee, you know. It's okay. Not a big deal. I don't have to be in charge all the time. One of the things they tell us to do is that if we're going to ask for forgiveness, and that's kind of what we're doing in this step, we should be able to render forgiveness. And a good friend of mine in Canada says that before we do the 8th step, we should say a prayer something like, I forgive everyone for anything they may have done to me. And it's, you know, the Lord's Prayer is a very dangerous prayer because we all know it so well, but we don't practice it too well sometimes. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And that's really what he's talking about, I believe. before we can get our mindset into going around to people and trying to make the amends, we really have to forgive everyone for anything that they have ever done to us. When I came to this step, I said, who do I put on my list? Remember now, my only problem was I drank too much sometimes. And my sponsor said to me, what is your wife's first name? And I got the hint. And then I listed my children on that. I'm a big one for that we really do a lot of damage to our kids, far beyond that which we're willing to admit, it seems to me. I know that was what I discovered in sobriety, that I had really done them a great deal of harm, that I stole time from them. I used to say my father is an even-tempered guy. He's always mad. And that was the way I ran things in the house, get mad. That was a simple way to handle problems, get mad. And that has a devastating effect on the people you live with. You may think it doesn't, but it does. It robs them of security, peace of mind, always. And the time. I remember when I first came in, my second guy was in the Boy Scouts, and I like to go on overnight hikes. And for me, camping out is the Hilton. But when this guy wanted to go on an overnight hike, he wanted his father to go with him. And I went. Not a great amend, but, began to take some interest in him. The big book tells us that remorseful mumblings will not do it at all. That's in English. Remorseful mumblings. We're great at that, aren't we? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I should have come home. No. Remorseful mumblings will not do it at all. It's amends that we have to make, things we have to do, affirmative things that we have to do. I think for my wife, I had to begin to treat her as a person. I don't know if anybody had this problem in their lives, but my wife was my wife, like an appendage, and I had to begin to treat her as a person who had her own likes and dislikes, her own wants and needs, and to try and meet those things, to treat her like a person, not just my wife. She had a name, she had an individuality, she certainly does, but I had to treat her like a person. And that took a little practice, I must confess. And I'm still working at it. And she likes the idea, I can assure you. The kids, it was, trying to make up for lost time. And some things you just can't make up for. They're on a list, and, you try to do the best you can. Business acquaintances or business people, I used to do a lot of criminal work when I first started out. And in 1968, I had a case assigned to me of a fellow was charged with armed robbery and stuck up supposedly stuck up a business in Mount Vernon, New York. And he and a person that was affectionately referred to as his rap partner had stuck up this business of payroll or something. And he was in the Westchester County Jail when I went to see him. And I went up to interview him. And 99% of the people that are in jail are there because they did the crime, you know. The justice system really doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I got there, and he said, I was in New Orleans at the time of this crime. He had been picked up months later. He was identified by the people through mugshots and was picked up months later. But he said at the time that this crime was committed, I was in New Orleans. I learned how to pronounce that. That's instead of New Orleans. I was in New Orleans, and I said, that's great. That means that I'm going to have to travel to New Orleans to find out if you were there. And so I did that in December of '68. I went down to New Orleans, and I was still drinking. And I did a lot of drinking in New Orleans. He said that he was one of us. He was with a woman on the night before this robbery, and he had done a lot of drinking with her. And at some time during the night, he pushed her out of the car, and he stole her car and left it in New Orleans. And, you know, was an otherwise nice fella. He said, I'm sure there's a report of the car being stolen, and that would show that you can get a hold of this woman. It would prove that I was in New Orleans at the time. And so I went down, and I did a lot of drinking, and I found a lot of his friends. And as you might imagine, his friends in New Orleans were drug addicts, alcoholics, bookmakers, you know, that he had a great class of friends. And I subpoenaed them all to come up and testify at his trial. But I did not find this woman that he was with the night before. One of the guys told me, I think she closed her place up, and that's all I had to hear, and that was the end of that. And so one of the things, I remember being so concerned. I woke up on a Sunday morning, and I was afraid that they closed the bars in New Orleans on Sunday. I don't know where I got that idea from, but I was terrified about them closing the bars in New Orleans. And of course, in New Orleans, most of the bars don't have any doors on them. They just have swinging doors. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a party town. So I was relieved to find that out. And then I got back home, and I thought I'd, done my job. And this is going to go into the ninth step, but I might as well finish the story. The case was tried, and I brought these people up that I'd subpoenaed down in New Orleans. And they said, oh, yeah, he was there, and what do you do for a living? Well, the one guy was arrested for bookmaking 37 times, and they had rap sheets on all these guys. And my client had about a 2.5-page rap sheet himself, and in those days they could question you about your prior convictions, so he remained off the stand. And as a consequence, he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in jail. I came into AA in July of '69. He was sentenced sometime in the beginning of August of '69. And when he was sentenced, he simply made a telephone call to a newspaper in Baton Rouge. And the fellow that he spoke to went out, and of course he found this woman who I was unable to find. And the guy from the newspaper called me up, and he said, "Mr. Keegan, I found the woman that your client was with." I said, "Oh." And I don't really like to tell the story on myself, as you can probably tell, but it's what happens to alcoholics, when they try to do things drunk. And so I went down to New Orleans again, and I got a hold of this woman, and she said, yeah, he pushed me out of the car. We were both drunk, and I reported him to the St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Department, and they have a record of it. And you know what? They had a record of it. They had this guy as being charged with stealing her car the night before the robbery. There was no question that he was in New Orleans at the time of the robbery. And he was in Clinton Prison down in Mora, New York, doing 15 years for something he hadn't done. Now, I can't imagine anything worse than putting that head on a pillow in a cell for something that you haven't done. It's bad enough putting your head on a pillow in a cell when you did it, but to do it when you hadn't done the deed. So it was not. I really couldn't go to him and apologize. I think he wanted more than an apology, and I had to prepare an affidavit that outlined exactly what I've told you here. It was not a very pleasant task on my part, and I was embarrassed. And that's a great motivator, incidentally, being embarrassed. Well, anyway, I brought it before the judge. The DA went down and investigated the woman, and she convinced them that actually he was there, and they saw the records, and he was released from prison. And he was very grateful to me, but why did it take so long? He'd spent about 6 months in jail that he really should not have spent in jail. And one part of the story that was a little comforting to me is that while he was in jail, he had a terrible drug arrest record. And while he was in jail, he really reviewed his life, and he said, drugs have been his problem all his life, and now he finally was doing time for something he didn't do. And he was going to do something about it when he got out. And when he got out, he got in a drug program. It wasn't Synanon, it was one of the other ones. And he became a counselor in court for people that were convicted drug addicts. And he became a useful member of his community, and to this day, I'm sure he is. And that was the end of his criminal involvement. It takes what it takes. I wish it didn't take me doing what I did to him, but I did that, and there are some things you just can't say I'm sorry about. Remorseful mumblings will not do it at all. And we have to do what has to be done. And I had to do it in that case. But it's one of the things that making this list does, I believe it has a direct effect in looking into yourself. Why did you do these things? Why did you treat people that way? Why? This self-centeredness is our disease. But why? What is it in your personality that permits you to treat people the way you treated people? And you really, you get to know yourself. You get to know more about yourself. And the real purpose, as it says in the book, is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and our fellows. And it's a process, and we have to do it. You have to sit down, and you have to make the list, and you have to be willing. I've decided that willing means want to. Willing is an elusive term, I think, you know. Are you willing? Yeah, I'm willing. I don't know that does it. Do you want to? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you want to make the amends to these people? And if you say no, I think you've got to keep asking until the willingness comes. And you want to do it because you want to live. You don't do this, you're going to die. You're going to drink. You don't do this, you're going to drink and you're going to die. For us, to drink is to die. So I think you have to keep asking until you really say to yourself, yeah, I want to do this. I know it's hard. Nobody says it's going to be easy. Nobody says not enough little pain in this. Nobody said that, you know, somebody's going to throw their arms around you and say, gee, thanks a lot. You've really done a wonderful job. Somebody's going to say, don't ever come back here again. I don't want to see you. I don't want to speak to you. I don't want you near me or any member of my family. And get out of here. That's what's going to happen. But you're going to learn a lot about yourself in doing that. And so I think you have to say, I want to do this. I want to do this because I know the people that went before me did it, and they look pretty good. It works. You put in the action, you get the result. You put in the action, you get the result. That's this whole program. We see that. You put in the action, you get the result. I had to stop as an amend trying to run my children's lives. I don't know if anyone in this room has that problem, but I had to run every minute detail. I'll never forget, I sent my youngest guy, who's got a learning disability, I sent him away to school, and we went up there for Parents' Day, and the headmaster said to all the parents around, please, now you have to remember you're talking about learning disabled kids. Please, when your son writes to you or your daughter writes to you, do not correct the spelling. I thought, why not? You know, that's my job. He doesn't understand. I have to do that. No, you don't have to do that. You have to be grateful that they sat down and wrote you a letter. And they'll someday learn how to spell. But you got to let go of that. My sponsor says we have temporary custody of our children. Absolutely right. They don't belong to us. You know, you may have had something to do with them coming into the world, but they don't belong to you. And you have to let go of them. And that I found to be very difficult. I think when we begin to find out what these personality traits that injured and disturbed other people, we can really find other people in our lives that we have hurt, and they too have to be made amends to. I had a terrible mouth. I don't know if anyone in this room had a similar mouth, but I mean, I should have been locked up and gagged and put away. I mean, for the things that I said to people, it was, I mean, it was just, you didn't know what was going to come out of me. Be having a nice, everyone enjoying themselves, and suddenly I'd look at somebody. Let me straighten you out. Now, here's what the problem is with you. You understand? This is it. And if you'd only do this, but you'll never do that. And you know what? Just insulting people and insulting them. And not remembering it. And the next morning, Jack, what got into you? What are you talking about? Fill me in. What did I say? Don't be ridiculous. You must remember what you said, what you did. Please, fill me in. Desperate. Desperate. Hurt people. Just terrible. And, I didn't really want to do that. I think one of the great positive results of this step is that when you look at it, you say, I don't ever want to treat people like that again. That's over. I stopped behaving like that. I don't want to ever treat people the way I treated people in the past. And I think what it does for us is it gives us a spirit that we can get along with anybody. We can be friends to anyone. I don't dislike anybody. I couldn't say that for the longest time. I could say that, like Chief Justice Rehnquist is not one of my favorite people, but he doesn't care. He doesn't probably even know I exist. Although I'm admitted to his court, he probably doesn't know that. But we don't dislike people anymore. We get along with people. It's a great change of personality that happens to us as a result of the 8th step, putting it down. And that doesn't mean we have to, one of the great truths that I learned when I came into AA was, I don't know the secret to success, but I certainly know the secret to failure. The secret to failure is trying to have everybody like you. Can't be done. That particularly involves pigeons you're working with who don't exactly like to be told the truth or what they have to do or what have you. But you cannot have everybody like you, and that's not the purpose of this step. But you can get along with everybody. Sweep away those prejudices. Sweep away your side of the street. Get along with people. It's a whole different life. Even non-alcoholics you can get along with, if you try hard. Sometimes I get a lot of people that say, I owe money. How do I make amends for owing money? Like that's you got to be a rocket scientist for that. They said, well, you got to make arrangements with them. Oh, I don't know. You have to do that, because if you don't do that, you're going to drink. And if you drink, you're going to die. So you have to make arrangements with them. Sometimes there's problems in a wigwam. Drunks don't make the best husbands or don't make the best wives. But where that happens, the book says that no outsider can appraise the situation, and I think that's probably true. You've got to do for yourself in your own home, and if you need to make that amends and tell all, then you do it. But that nobody can tell you what to do. But if there's no complications, there's plenty to do at home, the book tells me. Plenty to do at home. I wonder where they must have expected me when they wrote that line. There's plenty to do at home. And they give the example of the guy with the tornado, right? He comes up out of the cellar and says, nothing the matter here. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing, Ma, And then one of the things that I resolutely adhere to is that our name does not belong on the 8-step list. Self-centered people don't need their name anywhere on any list, I believe. I assume there might be some controversy about that, but I believe. It says that we should sit down with the family. Good idea, Analyze, don't criticize them, but analyze, this is what I've been doing and this is what I'm going to do to change. I wonder if how many of us neglect to do that. And, one of the things about alcoholics is we have great pride. That sometimes is our worst enemy, our pride. But if you sit down with a family and you say, I've been this and I've been that and I've been this and I've been that, and now I'm sober and I'm going to be home on time, I'm going to do this with you, I'm going to do that with you, chances are we're going to keep those promises. We're going to keep that agenda. And we don't want to disappoint anybody. We don't want anybody pointing to us and saying, there he goes again. It's kind of like closing the door. They tell you when you come in, tell the people that, will you have a drink? No, if I have a drink, I go crazy. You close that door. The people don't offer you drinks after you tell them that. My sponsor and I would have lunch every once in a while, and waitress would come over, as they always do. Can I get you a cocktail? And he'd look at the waitress and say, you get this guy a cocktail, he's going to chase you around this restaurant until your clothes off. Now, do you understand that? And she never offered a cocktail to us after that. It was simple. The door was closed, And I think we have to close doors at home. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to behave. I don't want any more disputes. I don't want any more of this. I'm going to do my part. And don't ask anybody to do anything else. Just do your part. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to take you to the Little League. I'm going to take you to the movies. I'm going to take you to dinner. Whatever it is, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a different person. And the pride in us will make us do that. And the 8-step prayer show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And that's what we have to utilize in our amends. Spiritual life for us is not a theory. We have to live it. It says that in that squiggly language in the book. And every time you see the squiggly language, that means it's important, right? Squiggly language is important. And that's in italics. We have to. We have to live the spiritual life. Otherwise, we die. What is a spiritual life? It's not religion, we know that. A few of the nuns that I recall were far from spiritual. I mean, they were just, they were unreasonable, unreasonable. I think they used to enjoy hitting you. But, take life on its terms. Be of maximum service to God and your fellows. Huh? What a thing to strive for. Be of maximum service to God and your fellows. That's what it's all about. It makes it very plain in the book. It's in English. It's on page 77. Be of maximum service to God and his fellows. That's the spiritual life. Because to do that, you got to get along with people, and you got to take life on its terms. And one of the problems that I think we all had in harming people, we made very poor examples, didn't we? I don't care if it's a niece, a nephew, a brother, children. As drunks, we made very poor examples for others to follow, whether we liked it or not. We were a poor example of how to live life, and we have to change that. We have to be a good example. And by our example, we will help others. How many times I know you've all had this experience. You'll sit down and discuss a problem with some non-alcoholic, and you'll give them the spiritual answer. Well, this is what you should do, and this is what and you see what God has in store for you. Where did you learn that? Right, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, they should have that for everybody. They do if you need it, but they may not need it. But we become an example to people, and that's being of maximum service, I think, to God and to our fellows. And then, of course, there are wrongs that we will never right. We will never be able to handle. And the book says don't worry about it. If you could, and you honestly would change that or would make the amends, that's enough. Don't worry about it. It says in making the amends, we We should be humble. Don't delay it. We should be humble but not servile. And we do not crawl before anyone. And that's not, the step isn't made to crawl. The step is to help us. The step is not designed to help the people on the list. It's to help us to understand who we are and what makes us tick and why we behave this way and why we do these things to people. Why did I take that money? Why did I lie to him? Why did I do that terrible thing? Why did I jeopardize my job? Why couldn't I be honest? Why couldn't I stand up? Why did I run away from that situation? Because the more you look at that list, the more you're looking at yourself. It's a great vehicle. I mean, this program is divinely inspired, no question about it. If you ask me to draw up a program to stop drinking, first step, stop drinking. Next step, go on, stop drinking. Third step, do not drink, and so on. Make a list of people we'd harm. What for? But the benefits of it, that you see it when you put it down in black and white and look at it and say, God, that's the way I did those things to those people. Why? What is it in my personality that has to be changed? What is it in my personality that's defective, that has me act that way? When non-alcoholics get drunk, they get drunk. They do stupid things. And they wake up the next morning and says, Jesus, that was dumb. Oh, God. When we get drunk and we do stupid things, the remorse that hits us is unreal. Because we know that we could do better. We know there is more to us than that. We know that we don't have to behave that way. There's something in us that says, that's not only stupid, that's not what I was created for. That's not what I'm supposed to do in this life. The remorse of... If there's anything that brings alcoholics to AA, it's remorse. Not physical injury, remorse. And that's something that only the alcoholic feels. The non-alcoholic, he don't really care, because he's not going to drink for another 5 or 6 months. Not going to bother him. But with us, it's different. We feel it differently. We're better than that. We can be a better human being than that. We can be a better father, a better husband, a better son, a better daughter, brother, whatever. We can be a better person. And that's what really grinds on us and brings us in here. I see my questions from Mary Ann. Will I find people for my 8-step list on my 4-step list? You certainly will. I hear a lot of that. All you have to do is tear off this list and you get your 8-step list. I don't know if that's really true to that. I wouldn't rely on a 4-step list. I wouldn't rely on simply those people I have resentments with that I have to make amends to. There's plenty of people that I don't resent that I had to make amends to in this 8-step list. I didn't have a resentment of the guy that got sentenced for 15 years in jail. I really didn't. He had a resentment against me. I lost his case. But I didn't have a resentment against him. But boy, he sure belonged on that list. So I don't think the 4-step list is exclusive, is what I'm trying to say. You have to do the 8-step independently and put down those people that, because that's how you're going to learn about yourself. I was told it was time to take responsibility for my actions of the past. Is that right? Well, I'm sure it is. Certainly the making of the list and the willingness to make the amends is in effect taking responsibility for it. Question number 3, should I put myself on my 8-step list? I think I've covered that. 4, should I go into detail and write a history next to each person's name, or should I just make the list and try to develop the willingness? I think we should be specific. What did I lie to Mildred about? How much money did I steal from Harry? What did I do to Mary? What did I do to George. Put it down, I believe, you know. I don't think you have to write a book about it. 5 is willingness the key. Again, I think willingness is very, very important, but I think it's an elusive term that I think, at least for myself, I have to translate this to I want to. I really want to make this amend. I want to have these things taken from me. Such freedom occurs with this. Should I put people I feel guilty or shameful or resentful about on the list? Absolutely. Embarrassment and shame, I think, are great motivations in AA. I think, you know, you look at that list and you're embarrassed, and that's good. That's okay. We should be embarrassed. If you're not embarrassed with some of the things you did when you were drinking, there's something, you don't belong in this room. You know, you just don't. You know, that's for another group or something, but it's not Alcoholics Anonymous. Will this list start the mending process in my relationships? As I covered that, I think we now begin to be able to form lasting relationships and relationships with people that, you know, one of the great things is that the book says that we have people that normally would not mix. And that's true, you know. I remember when I came to AA, the people that helped me were not even lawyers. You know, that's awful. A house painter, you know, a cop, an insurance salesman, you know, come on. But they helped me. I mean, they just, because they experienced it, huh? 2 of those guys had a month more sobriety than I did, you know. But how did you do that? How did you stay sober for a month, you know? The old story about 2 guys walking to see somebody in the bed. One guy's got 3 weeks, one guy's got 30 years. The guy in the bed looks at the guy with 3 weeks and says, how did you do that? 3 weeks. How did you stay sober for 3 weeks? And it's, you know, people that, we don't mix, but God, we have a message, we have experience, we have a power that we've experienced in this room, and rooms like it, that just cries out to be shared, cries out to be shared. And speaking of power, I have a story that I'm going to close with. It has nothing to do with the 8th step, of course. I was in Atlanta. I told you the story about the guy in Seattle, but this one I know is true. The one in Seattle could be a little, you know, but this one I know is true. I'm at this meeting, a bunch of lawyers, AA, American Bar Association, puts on AA meetings now, since we started this Commission on the Impaired Attorney. And these 2 guys are there, and they're partners, and they have a law firm in Atlanta. And I got talking around, and I said, how long are you sober? And he said, 18 months. And he said, did you ever hear how I got sober? I said, no. He said, they have this office in Atlanta. It's in a house. And of course, they decorate the house for Christmas. And this Christmas, they decorated the house, and they put little lights around the eaves and around the roof and around the doorway, and they blink. And he was in his load Christmas Eve, which is not surprising. And he drives by the office to check the lights. Don't ask him why, but he did, all right? And one of the lights was out, and therefore this whole string was out. So, of course, he couldn't go home and wait till the next day to fix that. He stopped the car, he's in his load, he climbs up on the roof. This is at a time, this is 1989, and that's significant because there was a tremendous chill in the South in 1989. Trees died, we lost orange groves. It was about 15 or 18 degrees in Atlanta, Georgia, in this Christmas time. And he goes up on the roof, and of course he falls off the roof. He hits his head and is unconscious in this sub-freezing weather. His partner is home with his wife in bed, and they're watching TV. It's Christmas Eve. And he says to his wife, I have to go to the office. His wife says, what, are you crazy? This is Christmas Eve. What are you going to go to the office for? He says, I have to go to the office. Don't ask me why. I have to go to the office. They drive by the office and they see this guy lying on the front step, out cold. They pick him up, take him to the hospital. That was the last drink he had. And he's been in AA with his partner ever since. That's a true story. That, you know, the power is scary. It is scary. You know, just look around you. It's scary. You don't even have to hear these stories. You know, the guy next to you who was somebody that, you know, you wouldn't even want to be close to. And you see it every day. We experience the power every day in our groups. Now, next week, I won't be here because I'm going to San Diego for the International Convention of Alcoholics Anonymous. 60,000 drunks in San Diego. They tell a story about in Miami in 1970. The police chief looked out between the curtains at the auditorium full of AAs in 1970, and he says, what's out there, to his deputy? And the deputy said, these are all alcoholics in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the chief says, Alcoholics Anonymous, does it work? And and the deputy says, I sure hope so. So we'll be back 2 weeks and we'll talk about the ninth step and the promises. Thank you.